Ho, 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 and welcome to every horror movie on Netflix. Ho, 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 ho. I'm Chris, and we're here with a very special Christmas episode, because 'tis the season. Am I right, everybody?
You're damn right.
Ho, ho. And I'm here with, as always, Steve.
Hello.
Mrs. Claus.
And I'm Patrick, Flying Portobello, Turbo Dog, One Man War on Terror, Bad Santa done.
Amazing.
I guess I realized I should have done hello, ho, 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 but, you know.
Yeah, points
The time has
off if you
passed.
don't say ho, ho, ho before every sentence today. Because it's our Christmas episode, guys.
Which is odd for a horror podcast. There aren't that many Christmas horror movies. I know a few. I feel like maybe there have been more recently. We had like the Krampus movie that was kind of big a few years ago, but...
And yet
yeah.
somehow Netflix has blessed us as Jesus, as God blessed Mary with Jesus, with a movie in fact called A Christmas Horror Story to review today.
Or perhaps it should be called Christmas Horror Stories, because this is an anthology movie, everybody.
It is.
Well, you know what's
a very
interesting
unconventional one, but...
is that a lot of people have horrific holidays because their families are fucking crazy. And I'm surprised that they don't just make endless horror movies about, like, people's true experiences.
Oh, well, there's
on
Christmas with the Cranks, you know, holiday class.
Anyway, yes, it's a multiple stories.
Multiple stories. If you're familiar with... The obvious comparison to make here is to Trick or Treat.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
Patrick, Elizabeth, have either of you guys seen Trick or Treat?
Oh, I've seen it. I mean, there are a lot of different anthology horror movies. I mean, you could... why Trick or Treat?
Because Trick or Treat is a bunch of vignettes that center around the holiday of Halloween, and it's kind of like the Halloween spirit as told through horror stories.
It's the Halloween season.
Well, this made me think of He's Just Not That Into You, also an anthology story movie. One of my favorites. Not horror.
Is it Christmas related?
I would call it horror.
There's many seasons throughout the movie. And,
I mean, as in most movies that take place over, like, any period of time.
And, so I like anthology movies. I think they're great because if you're bored by... It's just like ABCs of Death. If you're bored by one thing, you're not bored by another. It caters to a lot of people.
I agree with you in principle, but this is not a traditional anthology movie because the stories are interwoven. So
that's what I mean, yeah.
It takes
A
pretty
little
much the
bit.
whole movie for, like, everything to kind of pay off and for the arcs to be complete.
Well, yeah, but it's they're not interwoven in the way that one affects the other.
They're not interrelated.
But
They're not
they're not
interrelated.
interrelated, but they're not told sequentially. They're told like a soap opera where you get a little bit of story A, a little bit of story B, a little bit of story C, a little bit of story A, a little bit of story B, and so on.
Well, there's a little bit of an interesting question about authorship here because, you know, you can have an anthology movie like He's Not That Into You, which I think is the product of just one director as far as I know. I mean,
That's
actually,
true.
I don't know anything about it, I'm
I
guessing.
know a lot about it.
But is it just one director?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, this movie was
there
made
you
by
go.
3 directors.
But yes, this
Yeah.
movie was made by 3 directors. And so, I mean, there's that model. He's Not That Into You, whatever. I guess that's our avatar of that sort of anthology movie, where it is an anthology movie with separate stories, but it's still one author. And then there's the ABCs of Death model, where there's a bunch of different filmmakers who have input on multiple stories that are very much their work. This has 4 stories?
It has
5 stories?
4 stories
That are the product
Yeah.
of 3 directors and I think 5 writers, if I remember correctly. So there's this very weird question about, like, who did what and...
I felt
And
like it was
why?
all very much of a piece except for the weird CG, like, North Pole stuff. Like, that was the only kind of outlier. Otherwise, I felt like this could have been made. I mean, I do know that, so the 2 of the directors, one of whom did Ginger Snaps, which is a pretty revered indie, like, female werewolf movie, I think. And then the other director is best known for directing 2 Ginger Snap sequels. So I'm like, oh, they're buds. They probably learned a lot from each other. So there is like a kind of a cohesiveness to the style. I didn't feel like we were getting like drastically different versions or angles on the Christmas horror
It didn't
theme.
seem to me. It seemed like it was the same directors for me.
Yeah,
throughout.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
That it
With
was
the exception
different
that I
directors.
thought one of the stories was of notably higher quality than the others, so that's why I thought maybe there were some different
I'm
hands.
interested
wait,
to
I have
see
to know
which one.
But just tell us.
We'll
right-
get into that.
All right.
But,
I agree that it felt of a piece. It's just interesting to me that this many different hands were in the pot, especially that many different directors for a film that didn't seem to be going for like embracing different directors' voices or different authors' visions.
But just another note on the Christmas anthology movies. I haven't actually seen it. Is Love Actually an anthology movie?
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
It's kind of guess we're bringing up Altman 2 episodes in a row. It's kind of like that sort of thing where it's like many different characters whose lives are interconnected and we kind of weave in and out of them.
Okay, so
But
it's
the-
like Crash or something, but you wouldn't call Crash an
Not
anthology.
really.
Yeah, it's not an anthology movie. Like I think of an anthology movie as a series of self-contained stories that may or may not relate to each other. Usually there's a frame story, so like you'll have kind of like little themes that pop up, motifs in each one. But an anthology movie is like separate stories that are, for the most part, not related to the others. And Love Actually is more of like an ensemble comedy.
So you're
I think.
saying Love Actually wouldn't be an anthology because all the stories serve the same theme or the same kind of overall.
There are different themes
narrative.
that pop up. Yeah, it's all about different sorts of relationships, but I think for the most part, like they all take place in this over the course of like 2 days surrounding Christmas. And they're not like self-contained stories. They do all kind of build to their own separate climaxes, but ultimately one final climax.
Okay.
It's characters' stories weaving in tandem with other characters.
I
Whereas
guess
with
it's-
this, we've got like 4 like distinctly separate stories that don't have a lot to do with each other, except they all take place on Christmas.
I guess it's kind of splitting hairs to talk about what is or what isn't an anthology movie, but we use the term enough that I got curious.
I haven't seen Love Actually in long enough, fortunately, that it's very distant in my memory, which is the way I prefer Love Actually to be.
Well,
But
I'm glad you brought
Elizabeth
it up.
disagrees strongly about it being an anthology. I saw you shaking your head.
It doesn't matter. Anthology, not anthology, interwoven stories.
All right, it's a good point because
Regardless.
this movie is billed as an anthology movie, and I was surprised that it's not just here's a story, here's a little bit of the frame story that ties it all together that leads into the next thing. It's intercut. You know, everything seems to be playing in tandem, and they end up to be totally unrelated, except the fact that this is all happening on Christmas Eve.
You guys, is Pulp Fiction an anthology movie?
Oh my God! Okay, we've gone too far. So, what is
man.
this movie? What do we have here? We have William Shatner plays a radio
Wait,
DJ who
yes.
really kind of doesn't really
He
tie
doesn't
everything
tie anything
together.
together. He kind of provides a mental break from the actions.
okay.
Yeah,
But-
that is the best. I mean,
Interludes.
because presumably he's like the framing device, but that is the best way to describe
Let's
it. He's just
all-
kind of like a mental. He's like the punctuation to this whole thing.
Let's all
Yeah.
take a storyline and describe it.
Sure. What's your favorite? Which one do you want to talk about?
Okay, well, I'll describe my favorite, which was a family goes to the woods to cut down a Christmas tree.
Well, that's my favorite too. God
okay,
damn it!
well, fuck.
Well, that's
Go
my-
for it. Go for
Well,
it.
that's my favorite
Really?
three.
What?
That's the one that's heads and shoulders above the others, as we've just demonstrated.
Yeah.
All right. Let me
That's
just
the.
set this
I
up.
mean, that's the second shittiest one, in my opinion.
All right. Well, we're going to argue with you later.
Okay,
But
good.
just so we're on the
Good.
same page with our listeners, so the whole movie is framed with William Shatner, and actually what I thought was a strong performance, as kind of a.
Which says a lot for William Shatner.
Yeah.
Christmas-loving radio
He's
DJ.
a Christmas. He's just your small town Christmas late night DJ playing the Christmas songs, and really he doesn't contribute anything to the story.
No.
Then you have 4 storylines playing out kind of in tandem.
really to the film at all.
One of them is Santa Claus at the North Pole dealing with an apparent zombie outbreak of elves.
Yeah.
And so it's lowbrow stuff where he's just smashing zombies with his like
Trident.
trident.
At one point, he bashes in. Like I did write this down because I just this movie goes so over the top that I didn't think I could be surprised. I almost didn't even want to be. He bashes in an elf's head with another elf's severed head
Yes.
at one point.
Yeah.
Good.
It's fun.
That
Yeah.
just
gory, good
balls
gory
out
fun.
gory action. The other story is a family that is going to visit a old estranged aunt on Christmas Eve,
Yep.
and
A troubled family.
troubled family, and they run afoul of Krampus, the holiday demon.
Wait, What's Krampus?
Well, here is how they explain Krampus in the movie. After a small child knocks over a Krampus ornament inside the old aunt's house.
This is Krampus, right?
What's a Krampus?
He's like an anti-Santa Claus, a demon who punishes the naughty. He whips them, chains them up, throws them in a sack, stuff like that.
On Krampusnacht, the demon hunts the wicked from sunset to sunrise.
That's fun.
So if you didn't know who Krampus was,
Now you do.
That's how they explain it in the movie. Then there's a storyline with 3 high school students trying to investigate a haunting at a Catholic school where 2 children were murdered the previous year, and they're doing sort of a grave encounters sort of piece where they're going through the school. They're doing a video.
Chris, as a film student, did you ever have to go do anything like that?
No, but I wanted to. There were
Investigate a murder.
all my friends were creeping around the abandoned asylum extracurricularly.
I did all
okay.
kinds of that stuff. I've been in places exactly like this.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was
And then the 4th storyline, I'll let Elizabeth explain because she was about to.
Yeah, it's just adorable family, husband, wife, and their young son.
Oh,
What's-
that one. When you said the family, I thought you meant the one that was going to visit the aunt.
no.
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Goes. They want a Christmas tree, and they're going to go onto some private property to cut down a beautiful fir.
A misdemeanor, but
Yeah,
you know,
a
it's
minor
worth it for
misdemeanor,
Christmas.
but they're like, whatever, it's going to be fine. So this is the story.
I take back everything I said
Well-
before about what was and wasn't the shittiest story. I thought you guys were talking about the other family.
I don't
No,
even
no,
think
no.
it's a strong story, but the actors were so great.
Yes.
Like, it was
Yeah.
played so well. It was played with humor and pathos. It didn't have the greatest payoff, but like it somehow felt like the strongest
Well,
story.
And
the
this-
story is they're harvesting the tree and their son disappears, and when he comes back, he's not quite acting himself.
Well, look, I'm gonna blow y'all
not
out of the
quite acting
water
himself.
because you guys are all like, these aren't interconnected. The cop who discovered
Right.
the murders / deaths in the Catholic school the year before is the patriarch of the young family who goes to cut down a tree in
and
the
the
woods.
girl who gives the students the keys to the Catholic school is in the family that goes to the aunt's house.
Yes.
And they all listen to... And the Santa Claus is not very related, or so it seems.
The family that goes to the aunt's house is related to William Shatner somehow or other.
He's their
Well,
grandpa.
they're,
Oh,
okay,
right.
so
Their
they're,
grandpa,
they're
yeah.
vaguely interrelated, but I think like
It doesn't matter. It's just a gimmick.
It doesn't. It's a gimmick because, like, to say that they're interrelated, I would think like, oh, there's some like force or some event that connects all of them, and like, no, it's like, yeah, some of them they're in the same vicinity of each other. They pop up in each other's lives, a la Love Actually, but there's not like some like event going on that affects all of them in different ways.
The connections are very tenuous. I mean, if you're not paying close attention, you could easily be like, what does any of this have to do with each other? And especially, why does this DJ keep showing up?
Right, and if you're not paying close attention, you're not really missing much.
Yeah.
Watch it passively. It's fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's all these interconnected stories, and they intersperse with each other throughout the movie, right?
Which kind of frustrated me because, like I said, I thought that the one with the family harvesting the Christmas tree, I thought that story was by far the best story in the bunch. And it frustrated me every time I had to go back and do the rounds and check in on the 3 other stories,
Yeah.
which really weren't turning the dial for me.
So one thing I thought while watching this movie was, okay, if this was a traditional anthology movie and we just got like, you know, it's like Trilogy of Terror, or I guess it'd be Quadrilogy of Terror. We got 4 separate stories. We see them all through one by one. Would any of these have held up or held your attention? And to me, I guess the answer is no, because I feel like they're all drawn out to keep the movie at optimal length. Like, I think if we had just seen the story about the family and they come back and the kid's not quite himself, it is like kind of long for an anthology movie. It's like a 22 minute or like 20 or 22 minute short, which is a lot for this type of film.
So we all agree that the Christmas tree and coming home with the disturbed kid one is the best, Patrick?
Yeah. I actually really, and I feel like from what I've heard so far, no one else is really going to back me up on this, but I really like the one with Santa. until the end, which we'll get to in the spoiler room. I really enjoyed that. But I mean,
just to
as a
clarify,
complete unit, if you pull all the bits of the family going to get the Christmas tree, yeah, that's the best one.
The Santa one I thought was fine. It was fun. And I thought for a long time that Santa was played by Tom Noonan, but
Santa was a handsome man.
he wasn't.
he looks nothing like Tom Noonan.
So here's another question.
He looked like David Harbour, Jim Hopper from Stranger Things
Which
in like 20 years.
is my number one guy.
I do, and I still don't understand that. But
Well, look,
So can we take a step farther? Who would agree with me that the worst one was the family visiting the aunt and the
agree.
Krampus?
That I will agree with.
I disagree. I thought the kids in the fucking convent was boring and hackneyed as shit.
I disagree. I thought that was creepy.
Well,
Didn't do anything
this is a
for me.
complicated. This is a complicated
It's hard to
movie
talk about.
All right, let's take these one at a time.
Actually, you know what? Can I make a quick comment? I want to. So the general structure is interesting to me. The fact that they intersperse these anthology segments is interesting because usually you do have them separated, as we talked about. And I don't know if I'm defending the fact that they intersperse them in this, but a lot of the time, I'm thinking of Tales from the Crypt, which Steve lent me on Blu-ray back in
Not to be
around-
confused with DVD.
Ha, thank you,
No,
Elizabeth.
For you
definitely
animals
not to
out
be
there.
confused. A couple months ago, and they're weaker and there are stronger segments. And if there's 22 minutes of weak shit, it takes me out of it completely. And I'm not saying it's better necessarily to do 5 minutes of strong shit, 5 minutes of weak shit, then back to the strong shit, back to the weak shit. But it's a different approach.
But you
And-
always have this problem if you try to intersperse stuff. Like I remember, watching soap operas on TV at like Grandma's house or something. And it's like there's the one plot line that you think is kind of interesting, and there's like 3 minutes of it in the half hour because they check in with everyone else.
I will
mean, it
say
would-
this is a great way to disguise weaker material because
Yeah.
you're constantly like, I never, when it went back to the stuff at the convent or wherever the fuck they were, the mental institution abandoned thing, I never expected it to like pull my attention. So then eventually they
Yeah.
started resorting to making it like sexy. Like it becomes sort of exploitative after a certain while. I'm like, okay, if I'd just seen that short on its own, it wouldn't have worked. But at least like I had some semblance, I guess, of like hoping maybe that in the next beat when we return to this, like something's going to happen that's going to surprise me.
And when there are those hints of connective tissue between them, you do start to develop that idea of, this all fits together, except it doesn't
You start to
really
hope
that
it's
well.
going to pay off in some fashion.
I think what I'm saying is maybe this would be a good format if it was done better. Like if there were 4 stronger stories that were connected more in a more interesting and more compelling way. Cool, let's go
What
with
we
this.
have is a Tales from the Crypt where there's like one good segment, one that's okay, and 2 that kind of suck. Except we don't really find out how we feel about any of them until the end.
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, I think the one that we all agree on, I immediately was hooked by it, just because of the performances and just sort of like the mystery of it.
I mean, I think overall, I probably would have enjoyed this less if it had been 4 distinct segments that were told linearly and separately instead of being interspersed. I think I actually enjoyed it more because it was kind of playing fast and loose. I think I would have gotten more bogged down if I had to watch like the convent or the family going to visit the old aunt in its entirety without any other more interesting shit interspersed.
I think you're probably right, and I think that like Steve said, I understand why you do this, and I understand how it would be tempting if you're making the movie to kind of think that you're hiding your weaker material in this kind of format. But it really kind of shows that if you're making an anthology movie, like, and you have weaker stuff in there, like, you gotta be batting 1,000 to get away with an
There's
anthology.
anthology
no
is
way
tough
to
to make.
cover it up, really.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, you're bogging down all of the stories by having weaker material in there. And that's the effect that I felt. I mean, this is another movie that it did wear on me after a while, because I was like, I really don't care about 2 of these storylines. And 2.5 of them are okay. We'll consider the Santa 1.5, because this seems to be kind of on another plane outside of what else is going on in this movie.
I would have rather mixed in the segment with the Santa Killer from Tales of the Crypt.
The ultimate holiday horror. Yeah. From Tales from the Crypt, the movie, and the TV series.
I'm
Yeah,
not
both.
familiar with that. What are you talking about?
There's a classic, it's based on an EC comic where a woman, it's Christmas Eve, I think she's having an affair, and she decides to kill her husband, and her daughter is asleep upstairs, and she's trying to like kill her husband, hide the body.
While
the
escaped maniac dressed as Santa Claus is on the loose, and of course he comes to her house while she's trying to cover up the murder.
In the Tales from the Crypt, I haven't read the original comic, but we've seen the probably pretty direct adaptation from the British movie. But in the Tales from the Crypt TV series, like the little girl sees. Like, I want to say it's Clint Howard, but it's not. But it's somebody equally fucked up looking as Santa, like climbing up the terrace on the side of the house and like lets Santa Claus in because she has no idea. She's naive, and needless to say, the murdering housewife meets her end by an axe or something.
Yeah.
Well, I think if we're going to talk more about these, we got to kind of take them one at a time, lest we fall into the same trap that the movie itself fell into, where we're just all over the place.
So let's pick one to address first.
We better focus on our murdering Santa Claus instead of one from a different
movie. All right, let's start with our murdering Santa Claus. I don't know if there's much to say about it.
Yeah, that's pretty brief. I mean, he's a traditional-looking Santa at the North Pole. Elves are doing their stuff, getting gifts ready, and all of a sudden a rogue elf who's clearly sort of been infected by some sort of zombie-like disease runs in and starts trying to attack him. He has a large trident-like thing that's gold and glistening.
A staff, Gandalf.
Yeah. And fights the elf off, and it becomes clear that the rest of the elves have also been infected. So his whole storyline is just battling zombie elves, like we said before.
And how did it make you feel?
Sad. I don't like to think about Santa as anything but happy.
What about Bad Santa?
Well, even that makes me sad sometimes.
I like the idea of
the
kind of badass Santa who's like, all right. Oh, also, is this part of like holiday mythology that elves can't die? Like, where did that come from?
I don't know.
I mean, elves live a long time, right?
They do die though in this segment.
They do, but they keep
come
saying
back to life.
like they say, like I think Santa and Mrs. Claus repeat back to each other like 3 times in a row, like elves can't die, can they? No, elves can't die, and they just like keep going back and forth. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. I get that this is unusual.
Honestly, I love this segment. There's a twist that we'll talk about in the spoiler room that I did not like, but I love this segment. I love the actor who played Santa. He had a really unique, he seemed like a guy who had done some shit, who had seen some shit, like a guy you would trust to fight off some zombie elves, and he fucking fights them off.
And a great little like Jedi braid too, which his wife also had. I thought that was an bizarre touch.
And I also liked that this felt like it actually did have a little more of a distinct visual style, I guess. There are some interesting shots of like Santa's workshop that look like they were created in miniature, and I'm not sure if they actually were, if it was just CG that looks like a traditional like miniature set, but that was really cool. I liked that touch, and I just enjoyed the goofy horror twist of Santa fighting zombie elves. It was just funny. It made me snicker.
Honestly,
it may have been juvenile, but it was fun as a little short film, I guess.
When I saw the description for this movie and just the title image or logo on Netflix, I thought that's all it was. I didn't know this is an anthology. I thought, Santa fighting zombies and Krampus. That stuff didn't do a lot for me. It was kind of fun, but it just somehow I feel like I've seen it before, though apparently I haven't.
Well,
it probably would have been too much for me. As like a full hour and a half of that, I probably would have gotten sick of it. But just 20 or whatever minutes worth of it was entertaining to me.
I don't like the zombie genre in general, really, and just I thought it was juvenile is the right word. Just Santa killing a bunch of stuff, but I did really like the way the North Pole was realized.
Yeah,
I really liked how Santa's genocidal mission took him through all these interesting areas. Like you saw the mail room where they get all the letters from all over the world, and then you saw like a store room where there's shelves and shelves and shelves of like globes and toy trains and stuff.
But we've seen all this stuff in like, I don't know, the Santa Claus with Tim Allen.
Do you? I don't know.
There's like all the sort of minutia of like Santa's workshop, but it was kind of fun to see like that like shitty Hollywood trope spattered in blood
because there was no magic really in it. Like my memory of the Santa Claus is very hazy, but I remember, like, when you see the inner workings of the North Pole in all of these other movies that take place at the North Pole, there's, like, a fantasy to it. And it's like, oh, huh. And here it's like, oh, yeah, that's where we put the mail. It's just like...
That's where we do the fucking work.
It looks like an industrial setting. Like, if you actually had to do this in the real world, you would have a facility that looks like this.
In the Santa Claus, it's like, I would love to work there. And what we're seeing is the same thing in this movie, and it looks like Terry Gilliam's Brazil. Like, this is just like a bureaucratic hell.
So, that's fine. That's all fine. The other story that we could discuss next maybe could be the teens.
Okay.
Yeah, what about that? Like, I
have almost nothing to say about that. It bored the fuck out of me, and I will open the floor to anybody else to say what they thought about it.
I was into it. I was very into it. Until it went off the tracks late in the movie.
Yeah,
when it got
spoiler
sexy?
room material.
There's not a lot to spoil here, really.
Well,
to be
look,
honest, like we don't want to give the outcome to each one of these movies. We'll save that for the end.
There's three teens. One of them whom is a girl. Two of whom are guys. They are, like Chris said before, going into a Catholic school to film some sort of school project where two teens had been murdered the year before, and the place is creepy. I mean, I thought it was creepy. There's dark hallways, it's empty, it's locked and or empty rooms. You know, they end up in the basement where there's like a nativity scene that hasn't been put out that's pretty eerie looking with like blank eyes and like weird beards and stuff.
Yeah.
They do some fun intercutting of like ghosts and shit amongst the nativity people, stuff like that. They dial up the creep, they dial up the tension.
And I was waiting for something interesting and Christmassy to happen this whole time. I forgot about the nativity scene. The whole time they were among that nativity scene, I was like, when is this nativity scene going to come to life? I want the Joseph dummy.
That would have been great.
I want the shepherd dummy. I want the donkey dummy to come to life and start fucking chasing them.
They're the murderers. They're the people who killed the people.
It's just a standard fucking exploring a convent looking for a ghost.
No, I'll be honest. I don't understand what really happened in that segment.
Me neither. The ending was very disappointing. But here's the thing about that. I enjoyed that segment all the way through till the ending when I realized it wasn't going to pay off satisfactorily.
Yeah, that one gets weird because, you know, in these kind of exploitation horror movies, which I do feel like this is kind of in the realm of, it is definitely playing on, it's exploiting a holiday in its title and in its premise, and it is very sort of violent. It does feel like sort of like an asylum level movie that's trying to give you cheap thrills.
I feel like that's too harsh. It's definitely several notches above
Don't
asylum.
invoke the asylum.
Okay, I guess what I'm speaking to is what I expected going into it, and obviously it was elevated above that on one level at least with the one sort of.
I see what you're saying with the title and everything. Yes, it does seem like it's going to be really lowbrow stuff. When you look at the poster.
And you know, with this kind of movie, you expect sex, and that is the one segment that delivers and made me severely uncomfortable.
Good.
Wait, why did you expect sex? Because
I thought I was seeing an asylum movie, and I thought, okay, well, it's a horror movie on Christmas, but like, you know, given the title and like what this looks like, and you know what I assume the budget is, like this is probably going to have some TNA and some, you know, drugs and like sort of like inappropriate humor in it. And that was the one segment that did deliver on the sex element in a way that I found like just profoundly unnerving.
Yeah, Steve, you know, I did feel uncomfortable by that too. It was really weird. I'm looking forward to talking about that. But we have two other storylines, right? So there's a family who goes to visit their old aunt.
Yeah. It's a dysfunctional family. They're on kind of a for whatever reason. We learn later the father wants to have a nice holiday vacation, you know, and go and see their aunt who the kids presumably have never met. And they get there, and it's kind of this creepy haunted mansion-esque sort of estate.
Wait, quick straw poll. This has almost nothing to do with anything. How do you say the word the wife of your uncle? How do you say it?
I say aunt, but I consciously said aunt because I understand that that's how most people say it. I think,
okay.
Right?
I say aunt.
Aunt.
I say aunt. All right.
I have an aunt. I want to shout out. So
Unanimous.
we talked about Brazil earlier. My aunt Kathy, she's my rock. She introduced me to all the great movies in my life. When she signs cards, like a Christmas card, she draws a picture of an aunt and then signs it Kathy afterwards.
That's funny.
Which is adorable.
Let's get Aunt Kathy on the show so I can thank her for exposing you to cinema.
We should. She changed my life. I hope she's listening.
Anyways, I apologize for that diversion.
No, it's straightforward. Creepy aunt. This is family's dysfunctional. You get from
archetypes fully in play in this family. The dad is like the Chevy Chase. Like we're gonna have a great time this time.
The mom's
kids.
like whatever. As if I could ever have a good time.
The mom is
with you.
Chloe Sevigny from #Horror.
The kids are headphones in the back. Like shut up.
The boy
Dad,
is
shut
squirrely.
Up, Mom.
He's squirreling around with everything. Doesn't give a fuck.
The
girl is just over it.
They're at the aunt's house. It's clearly weird. There's figurines everywhere. The kid picks up a figurine of Krampus, gets startled, and drops it, and it shatters.
He doesn't get startled and drop it. When he is told what the importance of it is, and that he shouldn't be touching things that aren't his, he just says, "Oops," and then drops it.
He's just a little brat.
He's a little fucker.
He deserves to be taken by Krampus.
He did.
Yeah. So,
and this whole segment bored me, but one thing I did like was the uncle. The uncle was like riffraff from Rocky Horror. He had that weird, unsettling, like Krampus kind of thing going on.
Yeah, and Krampus is unleashed, and they must deal with the consequences.
Yeah, on the way home, they were into Krampus, and really, that's all I gotta say about it. It was fine in parts. There was I did like the one. There was a couple parts where they had some like human emotional moments when they're reckoning with Krampus is coming after him. That was nice. The rest of it,
there were some brief moments where I was like, "This is okay drama, like not great drama, but like when they wind up like in the church and like, Krampus is like pounding on the doors, which is like." It becomes a recreation of like the church scene from Sleepy Hollow. I thought of that like multiple times during that scene in this movie, where like there's like the threat that things are coming in through the windows and whatever else. I was like,
or the fog.
The father like opens up to his wife about like what's been going on with like their financial situation, whatever else, and like it's actually kind of like sweet in a really sickly sweet.
So points for that part, but not worth the time of the rest of the segment.
No, not at all.
It didn't. I didn't emotionally connect with that whole thing.
I didn't emotionally connect with it, but I felt like I didn't expect to emotionally connect with anything in this movie, and that was the closest I came. I was like, oh, this is like a parody, a pantomime of good drama.
I'm a hopeless romantic. I got a little. I got moved.
What about you didn't connect with the last one that we haven't talked about fully with the family going to
no,
cut
not
down
really.
the tree?
No,
really?
that didn't move me in the same way. I feel like it was a good story. Like it was a good when I see horror anthologies, I think of comic books because that's where I first learned about this stuff. Like that would make a great comic book and be really exciting, but like that didn't have the emotional impact for me that little tiny scene that had no business being in that segment did for me.
Man, you give me a husband tearing up, bearing his soul to his wife.
Oh my God,
I'm right there with you.
I love it.
I love it too.
Love it.
Love it.
Doesn't matter if Krampus is banging at the door or not.
Didn't like the segment. Love that moment. Maybe that moment was worth the segment. It certainly had more of a payoff in that respect. I mean, the ultimate payoff in that segment's trash, but but that sort of emotional moment paid off. It justified the segment more than anything in the convent segment, I would say.
Agree. Appreciate that.
I wanted like if it had gone on for like 30 more seconds. I'm a weepy guy lately. I would have teared up. Okay. Probably.
So then the final segment is the one we all love about the family that goes to harvest a fir tree from someone else's property. They come home and their kid is...
Well, while they're harvesting the tree, the kid goes missing briefly.
Yes.
And they find him and bring him home. Will is his name.
And something's wrong with Will.
Most adorable...
He's a cute fucking kid.
Child.
Like, I want
that actor is the cutest fucking little thing. Anyway.
And
meanwhile, also while this is going on, we see briefly that Steve Bannon is lurking in the
yes, that's who it is.
I also put that in my notes. Yes,
Steve Bannon on a snowmobile is watching.
Yep.
Oh, great. True. Well played.
Fine.
But yeah, it's a cute family too.
He's been waiting for his moment to play a horror movie villain, and he finally got it.
It's something that like I don't know. I don't have a problem with any actors in this movie, but this family like felt like a real family unit. Like
Yeah.
they must have done some extra like bonding exercises before they actually like set out to film this stuff, because like I really believed that they were like connected with each other.
And it's a group of 3 actually good actors. I mean, the actors in the convent, the actors in the family going to visit the aunt scene.
I thought the actors were fine throughout. I thought they were doing what they were there to do.
The actors
I think
in this segment are all really solid. They come off as real people, and especially that kid is fucking talented. I mean, cute, yeah, but also like really talented.
Yeah, he can be cute or he can be spooky.
He becomes very spooky, and
we'll get into it. So
he does
without
it well.
explaining what is really going on here, because I didn't anticipate it, but like suddenly, you know, they come home after this experience trying to find the tree, and the kid starts kind of behaving abnormally. He's the dad wants to just like sit down and have a beer and enjoy Christmas, but the kid is eating too quickly, and the mom's really concerned that he's going to upset his stomach, and the dad says, you need to slow it down, son. It's a kind of an absentee dad too. What's his deal?
His deal is he is actually the cop who discovered the crime scene last Christmas. So last Christmas he wasn't around much, and I guess the case is unsolved, and he's got some demons because of it, and anger issues and stuff
and
like
a
that.
Huge drinking problem, we find out.
Which maybe you would if you were a cop and you were on that case, and
I mean, it seems like it was probably pretty disturbing, but yeah, and he even says, I wasn't around much last Christmas, but I want to make this Christmas special and good for us. And the kid is really kind of fucking it up because he's just behaving like a weirdo.
When the dad says, you slow it down, son, the kid stabs him with a fork, and like stabs the dad in his hand with a fork, and the mom is like, no, like, don't lash out. It's, you're not around much. You haven't been lately. You haven't been present. Like, it's okay that he stabbed. Like, that was a moment that actually rang kind of false for me. But I do kind of understand it with the logic of these characters as we go forward, that they want to, like, the dad is kind of the outlier here. Like, it's okay that he gets stabbed with a fork because, like, he doesn't really know what's going on. He doesn't have, like, the mother-son bond that's going on there.
Well, I think this is an interesting storyline because it does bring up the most tension between all characters. There's high tension with the cop father who has witnessed the murders the year before and is struggling himself. There's high tension with the kid who we know there's something off. We're not sure what it is. Is he possessed? Is it not really him? We don't really know. There's tension with the mom who's trying to navigate both of these things to be a good mother to her child, to help her husband who's obviously has some psychological issues. And it's some true stressful situation.
And there's tension because you know that Steve Bannon saw him steal the tree, and you don't know what's going to come of it.
It's very
There's
true.
that lingering in the background, but also, Elizabeth, you reminded me of this, like, the dad doesn't really know how this kid is supposed to behave. Like, you get the sense that he's, like, working all the time, and, like, he doesn't understand, like, how to be a dad. So, like, when the kid starts to act out, he doesn't know, like, should I reprimand him or not? So, like, the mom is in the background
trying to guide everybody, right?
And that's really
tense
tense, too, because it's like, you expect in that situation, just as a viewer, like, the male authority figure to be the male authority figure traditionally, and he's not. Like, he doesn't really understand how he fits into this family unit,
which is where, and I hate to keep harping on this point, but this is where the distinct voices of some there's a different writer and a different director on this segment, I can guarantee you, because they feel like real people. They are written and directed like real people, and the ones in the other 3 segments basically felt like caricatures to me. And all of a sudden you have this one segment where, this feels like a family unit that actually knows each other and understands each other and has the resulting weight because of that.
I would want to see this segment as a full-length movie.
I was just gonna say that. Like, I could see extrapolating this to a 90-minute movie.
I don't know if I can endorse
I have a great
that.
title. I have a great title for that movie, which I will reveal in the spoiler room.
Great.
Okay.
But yeah, this segment was the scariest, I thought, by a country mile.
I'm so happy. I was in my mind right before you said that, I was like, he's gonna say a country mile. Anyway, good.
I mean, I've said before that the idea of having someone that you love and they're not quite themselves in a horror movie is one of the scariest things. And this
in
segment,
life as well.
This segment actually kind of cashes in on that in a pretty good way.
Excellent.
Again, payoff, ending was a little rough on that bit. It wasn't
didn't like it.
unforgivable.
Didn't care for it.
It wasn't unforgivable, but I don't care for it.
But
if
we're
I saw
gonna
this
be holding a
feature
grudge.
length, yeah.
But we can say before spoiler space, like Steve Bannon gets a lot more screen time in the end.
Yes.
He plays a pivotal role.
Yes.
I almost canceled my Netflix subscription because of how much screen time Steve Bannon was getting. But it wasn't actually Steve Bannon. Yeah, and then, of course, tying this all together, well, not really tying it together, but coming in here and there is Shatner as the...
Like, there's no reason for him to be there except for the very final scene.
He basically exists to set up the twist of the Santa.
Well, and it's a staple of these anthology sorts
thing.
of movies that there's like kind of like the radio DJ, like Tales of Halloween is one that came out like I think in 2015. That's been on Netflix for a while that I finally bit the bullet and watched, where like the connective tissue is a radio host who is sort of talking about the news of the town, and then it kind of fades in and out of these stories. And like even in that movie, it's like kind of cool to see like in like Escape from New York or The Fog, like a radio DJ sort of like as the backbone of the movie, this like providing like a comfort zone in the midst of the horror.
Is that Escape from New York, or are you thinking The Warriors?
The Warriors. You're totally right. I'm sorry. The Warriors.
They do
yeah.
Escape from New York in The Warriors, but...
If Shatner fit into the proceedings more, it might make sense if he was actually describing these specific scenes that
But
we're
he's
going
not.
into.
He's just talking about holiday music. Like there's
Yeah.
that first scene where he's like, the weatherman is like, you know, he's trying to get him hyped up about Christmas.
Yeah.
And like the weatherman is just like Norman, he's like kind of grunting. He's off in the shadows, and he just holds up this like, you know, he writes on paper in red marker, "Fuck Christmas," and William Shatner is like horrified, like, "Oh my god, how could anybody not like Christmas?" And Norman storms off, and you wonder the whole movie, like, well, you wonder for 20 seconds, well, where did Norman go off to? And then you kind of forget about it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I feel like William Shatner is there because it's just kind of like a trope in these anthology sorts of movies, or even in like some classic horror or genre movies like The Warriors in the Fog, that there's like this comforting voice that kind of centers you as all this crazy stuff is going on. Ultimately, we could have done without any of that, and without the payoff that comes from it.
Well, we could have done without it, but I liked... It was a little bit of holiday atmosphere. It's an anthology movie. I don't need everything to relate. It was nice to take a break. It was nice to be like, okay, what's going on with this guy? I thought his character was likable. It was adding some Christmas holiday atmosphere to the movie.
I didn't even like Shatner in it.
Okay, here's the thing. I don't
People
like
were
Shatner.
People were praising Shatner before. I mean, I love Shatner in the original
I praise
Star
Shatner.
Trek.
Look, here's the thing. I've never been a fan of Shatner.
He does a great cover of Common People by Pulp, and that's all I can give him. Also, he did a whole movie in Esperanto. Wow. That's kind of cool.
I don't like Shatner at all, but so when I saw William Shatner, I was like, okay, let's see this William Shatner. And I thought he was actually acting to some extent.
I was just like, if you're going to have William Shatner in your movie, give him more to do than this.
Have you never seen William Shatner in anything? Like, he just...
Yes.
He shows up everywhere. He's in so many shitty movies.
But I mean, there's no other name actors in this movie. Like, if you're going to cast Shatner...
He's barely even a name actor at this point.
Shatner is a name. Like, literally the
probably
name
had him for,
Shatner.
like,
You
one
say the
day.
last name Shatner. No one else has that name. No one else carries that
Duchovny.
reputation.
Oh, wait. I thought you meant actors who we know by their last
He
name.
at this point has a reputation as a,
basically did.
like, severely washed up, like, D-list actor. Like, that's just who it is. Like, I feel like it's a joke that, like, Shatner is in this movie, and I feel like he's just having fun. He's like,
It's a joke,
I gotta
but
work
see,
for the day.
That's why I like Shatner. I don't
But
think
Shatner
plays
has
the character.
presence.
I don't think Shatner plays the character as a joke, even though he could have. I was expecting to see fucking Priceline.com Shatner showing up in this movie, but instead I got someone who actually seemed like a real person doing his radio shtick. Whatever. There were a couple bad jokes in there, but I thought it was
guess.
all right.
I mean, I guess that's true. It felt so forgettable. It felt so
You
unnecessary.
expect too much out of Shatner is the problem here.
No, I don't know.
It does seem weird that like they would go to the lengths to do that, but then again, the lengths are not far. Shatner is like a phone call away. Like, you just call him up and he will show up the next day to be in your movie.
I mean, that's
you don't even
not
have
true.
to pay him.
That's not true.
Give him some whiskey, give him some Jack Daniels and eggnog, and he will be there. He's a rock.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Well, guys, it's that time. Elizabeth, would you cue it, view it, or screw it?
I say view it. I thought this movie was fun and entertaining, and I think that you should watch it if you are a horror movie fan around the Christmas season, and I'm getting a lot of looks. So,
if you're a horror movie fan, around if the Christmas season inspires you to get into horror, you should watch this movie.
If your
that what you're
horror
saying?
fandom and your celebration of Christmas coincide,
Okay.
watch this movie. I thought it was fun. I was entertained. I thought it was. There were parts I didn't like. I got a lot of complaints, but I enjoyed watching this more than a lot of other movies we watched. Cue it.
Cue it. So, Steve, view it, cue it, or bah humbug.
Oh, wow, nice twist. I wish I could take advantage of the bah humbug, but I would say cue it. I would say, is this Trick or Treat for Christmas? No, not even close. That's not a perfect movie either, though. It's got its flaws. There's at least one segment I wish had been totally excised and replaced with something else. It's fine. Like if you're having a holiday party, put this on in the background. It will present some problems because it's difficult to follow given the way that everything is sort of mashed together. But, it's okay. Like, it made me excited for Christmas in a way that I haven't been in a long time.
Oh,
Oh, well, that's the highest review you can give a movie like this.
A view it would be. It's still a cue it.
Right.
Chris.
I'm going to go ahead and say view it. On
yeah.
this one. View it as long as it's Christmas.
Don't watch it.
You got a short window.
Yeah, you got a short window to watch this movie.
12 days.
But if you're looking for a Christmas anthology movie that happens to be like fucked up horror stuff, absolutely.
This is your girl.
Yeah, this is your girl.
This is your girl.
Snuggle up tight.
And here's what I can
the
say.
Christmas horror
Here's what I can
story.
say. I in a hindsight, I can say, okay, this sketch was bad. This part was bad. None of these storylines paid off the way I wanted them to, but I had a damn good time watching them until the end, where I realized that it was all kind of a charade, and none of these were going to end in a
Yeah.
satisfying manner. But other than that, I had a great time. So view it if it's Christmas time.
Patrick?
I'm stunned by these view-its.
Well,
And I'm going to confess to just I'm going to go ahead and game the average here and say screw it. I might go with a cue it normally.
bah humbug.
A bah humbug, yeah. I'm going to go with a bah humbug here. Which I feel conflicted about because
You should.
there was a lot that I did enjoy about this, but there were so many flaws. I hated the way pretty much all of these segments ended, and I especially hated the actual ending of the movie, which we're going to get to.
Okay.
I don't know.
That was rough.
There's just so much missed opportunity here, I guess, and I would not encourage anyone to actually watch it. There's good stuff in here, but I wouldn't encourage anyone to actually watch it. So actually, I'm not even gaming the average. Don't waste your time.
Okay. Well, what's that, gang?
Oh, Santa?
Is that Rudolph?
It's the sleigh pulling up to take us to the spoiler room. If you want spoilers, get on board. Otherwise, you better go to sleep and we'll skip your house tonight.
I call Rudolph. I'm riding on Rudolph.
I just want the sleigh.
Whee! Whoa, ho, ho, ho. All right, we're back, and we're in the spoiler room now.
Wild ride to get here.
Wild ride to get here. We went over the river.
Through the woods.
We went through the woods to the spoiler room.
At grandmother's house.
I forget what we have to talk about here. There was
Well,
something I wanted to
look,
bring
It's
up right
hard
away.
because this movie is so chaotically organized, so I think we should go one by one,
Uno
spoil
a uno.
every fucking short. These are shorts, like glorified short films. Go
Well,
one by one. So
let's
let's
start
start
with
with your favorite.
No, let's start with the convent one because I think these are
Okay.
kind of the order that they were presented.
That's the one I'm most confused about. So I guess we might as well begin there.
Oh,
That's
I
the most
understand.
boring one. So
It's boring. I
might
got
as well
no
start
help
with
for
the
you.
shit.
I got no help for you. They bang. She's under the influence of a ghost who wants her to get knocked
Okay,
up.
you guys, please,
I
just...
would not have put it past this movie to have a blowjob scene, and I was impressed that they have a scene where like a male actor turns down an easy blowjob. Like immediately I was like, oh god, this is going to go into the territory that's going to make me very uncomfortable. And like, thank God the actor or the character says, like, no, I don't want to do this. And that's when we realized, like, oh, there's a ghost at play here.
Well, here's a situation that doesn't matter. One of the teens who was murdered the previous year was pregnant and had tried to get an abortion, didn't want to have the baby, blah, 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 blah. It's a little unclear if it was like a suicide situation, murder situation, I don't know. But basically her ghost comes back to possess the current young teen and to convince her to have a baby. To have her ghost baby. So she starts trying to have sex with people to get pregnant. So she tries to have sex with the one dude, and he turns her down because he has a girlfriend, so she kills him. Then she attempts to have sex with the other dude who's there who is into it, and they have sex. And as soon as he impregnates her, she comes to and is like, what happened? What's going on?
What did you do to me? And he says, what did you do to me? Like, you sat on top of me. I didn't want this. And you, like, basically raped me.
Confusing. Very confusing.
He should have had a consent app.
Agree. When in doubt, have a consent app. You know, that solves a lot of problems. But anyway, and then there's just kind of mass confusion. And it basically ends with her being like, oh, God, what have I done?
When she gets out of the basement that they've been locked in.
She gets out, but she's pregnant.
Who cares? Oh, God, what a disappointment.
Yeah, who cares? Like, I want to say that there's, like, some kind of moral message here. There's not. Like, I want to say that, like, I'm horrified that this woman... Like, I don't know if I've ever seen in a movie a woman rape a man. And that is what happens here. And I don't feel like there's any sort of message.
Well, and it doesn't pay off because all we know about is, like, now she's pregnant with a ghost baby. But we don't see that, you know, if that's going to happen, you want to see the product of that.
Yeah, is it a demon baby?
Is it a demon baby? Is it just a regular baby that, like, what?
Alien baby?
Alien baby?
No, it doesn't matter. Like,
alien
That's
baby.
what I'm saying. You don't get the benefit. Like, one of the great joys in life is women being impregnated by non-human things.
Let me blow your mind.
You know, and when you don't get the payoff, it's useless. Blow my mind.
well, I will say, even in Rosemary's Baby, you don't see the baby.
On to the next one. Let's cover the Krampus story.
Krampus story, the girl becomes Krampus, but who cares? Basically, the idea is if you have enough bah humbug in your spirit, you can become a Krampus.
I cared a little bit because I thought Krampus looked fucking
that
sweet.
Next time you
Krampus did look pretty fucking awesome. He's ripped. He's like albino and just sort of like, he's horrifying looking.
Yeah.
He's a great monster.
And he comes back around in the Santa segment.
Yeah.
He comes to confront Santa.
Well, I have questions about that we will get to, but I feel like that might have been a different
Or she
Krampus.
comes back
I'm like,
around,
I don't
I guess
know.
we should
Can there
say.
be multiple Krampuses? Krampi? I don't know. Like, it was very
Well, there can be
confusing to me,
multiple
but-
Santas,
Can there be?
right? I mean, there's one in every mall.
Sentai.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I don't have anything to say about that piece other than what we already said.
Yeah, I mean, the family, they get slowly killed off. The young teen girl's the only one who's left. She has enough bah humbug in her.
She's the only innocent one. Like, she's innocent compared to the people she's surrounded with. Because, like, yeah, she's like stolen apparently, but like she's not like lied in the same way that like other people in her family have. They're in the church, like kind of confessing their sins and like bonding. And she says, "I'm not as bad as those other kids with the sex and drugs and the cutting." So like which is a really funny line, but like in this world, like she's the most innocent, but she's upset that like the aunt has like allowed the Krampus to like fuck things up.
Oh yeah,
like,
because the aunt let the Krampus off its leash.
right. So then it makes sense that like she suddenly becomes like going from this like relatively innocent girl
To save herself,
being filled with malice and then being inhabited by Krampus.
Yeah. So the uncle is actually the Krampus that's out in the woods killing everybody because he's just a bitter man, and then the aunt's misdoings fill the girl with such rage that she takes on the mantle of Krampus. And then there's a Krampus you see in the end of the movie in the Santa section that looks the same but is somewhat unrelated. We'll get to that in a minute.
A little bit confusing. Let's cover let's cover the ending of the family, which actually, as much as I liked that storyline, really disappointed me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of goes off the rails. So she confronts Steve Bannon in the woods, and he apparently is a sort of master of these like troll creatures.
There's changelings in the woods, and the changelings
They're
snatch the
changelings,
boy, and it's an evil little gremlin thing that has inhabited his body, kills
Right.
the dad,
The dad is absolutely brutally slaughtered.
practically tries to rape the mom, opens all the Christmas presents, the worst things you can imagine.
Yeah, in opposite order of what you just named.
Yeah, I can imagine worse. But
And that changeling creature looks creepy.
The changing is real creepy. And
The,
so
the little kid occasionally changes into something that looks like a little changeling gremlin thing, and it's weird looking.
and you know the wife gets a phone call from Steve Bannon, the greatest horror of all that any of us can imagine. And he says, you know, you came into my woods, you cut down a fir tree, I can help you. You need to bring the boy back here because he's a changeling. So she like ropes him in. She kind of has to trick him into going back to the woods.
Very tense scenes. I loved
A lot
it.
of tense scenes. But then
what's
they're back-
ultimately confusing is like,
Yeah.
why does he try to strike that bargain with her? Like, he doesn't seem interested in getting anything out of that
yeah,
experience.
why does Steve Bannon care?
He lures her in. She's surrounded by these, not changelings, but these like trolls. I think he actually uses the word troll at one point.
I think
With the glowing eyes, because a changeling is like a person who has been like turned into something else that is a facade of their former self, and like he just has these like goblin things like hanging out in the woods, and I don't understand like what he hopes to gain from like drawing her back there.
It's interesting
got
that he
very
cares.
confusing.
He's
at that
just the
point.
keeper of the changelings, I guess.
Yeah.
He feels a responsibility. Maybe they'll be explored in a prequel
I
film.
guess so. She fucking kills him. And
Well, yeah, here's an absurd thing. She brings her dead husband's gun with her.
Service weapon.
She's freaking out. And he's like, Steve Bannon is like, look, I got these things under control. Just listen to me. She's terrified. She shoots and kills him.
Like, accidentally.
Accidentally, which is a bizarre thing.
I think the way I read it is because she accidentally kills him because he says, like, oh, these changelings don't fuck with me.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. And I think because she accidentally kills him, the changelings are like, oh, she helped us by killing this guy who was checking us, so we're going to give her the kid
So
back.
we'll give her son back. And that's exactly what happens.
And that's the end of that story. But
And the weird thing is that I didn't get that concept at all when I watched it.
it might not be legitimate.
I thought that she fucked up by killing the changeling keeper.
She did, but it was a happy accident because the changelings were like, "Oh yes, he's dead." So we're gonna. That's how I read it. Now that's not.
that's the only reasonable
explanation.
explanation.
That's just,
I didn't read it that way. I thought, well, the changelings get her kid now.
they gave the kid back.
No, they do?
Yes.
yeah, there's like he comes out in his underwear and his
Yeah,
tank
they
top
get
and
him
he
back.
cradles him, and like it's a happy ending.
The end of that storyline is the mother and the real son in the woods clutching each other.
Patrick can remember 6 of his nicknames every week.
I will admit I had a couple too many drinks while I was watching this movie, so
Too
that
many
may be
eggnogs.
why I didn't process this ending as cogently as the rest of you did.
Too many eggnogs.
It's
Yeah,
the one
yeah.
rewarding ending I think out of the entire film. Like everything else kind of ends in sort of chaos or just anarchy.
I
And
wish
so
it had been
we have this
better,
one like
but yeah.
heartwarming like mother reunited with son, and it's beautiful.
And Steve Bannon dead.
And Steve Bannon dead. Yes,
As
Like,
heartwarming
shot
as
in
it
the head.
gets.
Well, yeah. So that takes us to the final, ultimate ending of the movie, and perhaps the most controversial ending of the story, which is the Santa madness, where Santa's killing zombies. Santa finally confronts Krampus.
Who's presumably
The
unleashed,
same Krampus.
unleashed this curse
Yeah.
on him.
And so it's like, because it looks the same as the Krampus we've seen before, we can kind of think maybe it's the girl or something, and that would kind of tie everything together. But then also, like, we know that girl's like not unleashing a curse, a zombie curse.
Yeah,
probably.
she's been.
Yeah, it's like I
Yeah.
never suspected that like this was tied to that other event. It just
Right.
felt like this seems like the logical conclusion to a movie called A Christmas Horror Story that features Santa Claus.
Right.
Like we're gonna have that final confrontation.
And
with
there-
the ultimate monster.
There
But that's
is
not
a
what we
pretty
get.
sweet, brief lightsaber battle scene
That
Yeah.
was awesome. I loved that.
between Santa with his trident and Krampus with his fists. That lasts not nearly long enough.
The note that I wrote down about that was Santa v. Krampus, stylized like Batman v Superman, is awesome until it isn't.
Oh, it's
And when it
Well,
isn't,
Santa says something similar. He's like, Krampus, the ultimate villain of Christmas.
Yeah.
it's Santa v. Krampus.
It's very
dawn
comic
of
booky.
mass murder.
yeah, because
Yeah,
you
and-
find out
And this
that
movie takes a sad twist.
Santa is actually Stormin' Norman, the weatherman who William Shatner has been referencing throughout this whole thing, who has been down at the mall serving as a mall Santa. And Shatner keeps referencing this hostage situation that's going on at the mall. And you find out at the end that Stormin' Norman, as Santa, has lost it and has massacred a shitload of people. And all the elves that you've seen massacred are actually his hallucinations of the real people he's murdered at the mall. And it's just this sick, just really, in my opinion, poorly chosen, really misguided twist to this sort of jokey, silly, stupid segment that's been about, Santa killing off zombie elves. And it's basically the end of the movie. It's just
The cops show up and shoot him to death, and then it's like, that's the end of the movie. Merry Christmas, everybody.
It's such a sick, just bum note to this movie that's been, in some places, arguably pretty entertaining. It's, just bad. Just bad.
It is bad. So, immediately you recognize if you see Norman in his little booth, he is the same actor who plays Santa Claus. But, given how sort of, bizarrely this movie is structured, I was like, am I supposed to understand that that is the same guy and that he's a mall Santa? And it wasn't really until the movie was over that I realized, oh, that's what they were trying to communicate. I feel like this is a case of bad filmmaking. Bad storytelling. I would expect in a movie like this to have an actual quote unquote Santa Claus fighting battles against the elves.
It was just a little bit too try hard edgy. Whoever came up with this idea for the twist, I guarantee you Die Hard is their favorite Christmas movie. And I was like, I don't know. You could have ended it with Santa and Krampus fighting. Santa kills Krampus and it's Merry Christmas. That's the end of the movie. Fine. And I didn't really... The twist, I thought they had earned the twist. I could follow it. I could be like, okay, I see, that makes sense to me. But then, I don't know. In this day and age, I don't want to think about, hundreds of people being massacred at a mall on Christmas Eve.
Right.
I think that's the problem with this, is that for the most part, the rest of the movie is sort of... I don't want to call it fun, but it's a little bit spooky. It's supernatural. It's goofy Christmas tropes that are enjoyable to watch. And a bunch of people trying to celebrate Christmas getting slaughtered by a crazy dude.
In Aurora, Colorado.
It's really
massacre.
that's genuinely upsetting.
And but it's played for the same kind of camp as the rest of it. So it's okay, I can get along with the camp when you're talking about
a changeling,
and Krampus pulling your kid away with a chain, but,
or a possessed teen.
But slaughtering teenagers who are working as elves at the Santa display at the mall, I can't appreciate that in a campy way the same way.
I guess it's hard to say how they intended that final bit where you see that he's actually murdered a bunch of normal people at the mall, if that was intended as camp or not. But it still comes off as a sick, psych, because you've been enjoying... We had different reactions to that whole segment, but I at least was enjoying. I was like, oh, this is stupid and kind of silly, Santa fighting off zombie elves, and it's oh no, this was a massacre at a mall of real human people, and it's just kind of ha, fuck you for laughing at that asshole. That was kind of how I felt.
It's weird because also you've been trained to be invested in Santa's sort of Santa Claus's struggle with the entire movie. How do I make Christmas happen? And Krampus arrives, and it's superimposed with Krampus delivers a death blow to him while Norman is shot to death in a mall. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I don't know what that means. Why end on that note?
Santa has been presented as this superheroic kind of badass for most of the movie, and it's what are you supposed to take away from that? Nothing. They didn't think it through enough.
The Santa storyline is upsetting enough. He has to kill Mrs. Claus, all the elves are dead. It's oh, come on, just dour.
I can laugh at that because those are sort of really absurd fantasy characters.
Well, yeah.
And I appreciate the absurdist, over the top take on all that, but You know, when it winds up with a mall massacre. Come on, man.
Maybe this was made before there were mall massacres.
Yeah, does anyone know what-
2015. It was 2015.
Oh, no,
So no.
that's not. No.
It was made simultaneously with a mall massacre.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my only big issue is that twist.
Well, look, could a Christmas horror movie not be a downer? Can you imagine a Christmas horror movie that doesn't end on like a really
Sure.
sour note?
I think it should end on a dark note, but it should play by the rules of a horror anthology. Like
A pleasingly dark.
Where-
I
where's
cannot
the
think of a
horror?
single horror like anthology or horror movie in general, like Black Christmas. Patrick and I had this conversation, or like Black Christmas, Christmas Evil. Like these movies are all like cynical takes on horror. Some of them begin with like killers who love Christmas and like kill people who don't enjoy Christmas, but it always ends on a black note. Like I can't imagine how this movie could be more holiday appropriate, I guess, for what it is.
I guess it's
Like,
just
how can a
because
horror movie end on a positive note
I
that
guess-
makes
I
you
don't think it
feel
needs to end
Christmas
on a
cheer?
positive note. If it ended with the changeling,
Right, that's a positive note.
If a changeling had come and eaten William Shatner at the end, I think that would have been fine. But like within the universe that they had kind of been playing in, to kind of be like, oh, actually, this whole thing you were invested in didn't happen. It was actually a mall massacre. Innocent people were just murdered by a guy who lost his shit. I'm like, that's not the kind of dark theme.
I thought about this while watching this. That's your favorite trope. Or I guess I should say your least favorite trope. I was being sarcastic, but like people who just lose their shit.
Yeah, because it's because when someone makes a movie about someone who just loses their shit and kills everybody, I think of like someone who thinks Die Hard is their favorite Christmas movie. Someone's like, I'm just gonna be edgy and I just want violence, but I don't want to earn it.
I mean, the two problems to me are that it involves the slaughter of a bunch of innocent characters who we've never seen before. We have no frame of reference as to their moral sort of grounding. You know, William Shatner, even if Shatner, I mean, your example of the changeling showing up to eat Shatner, we have kind of an idea of Shatner as a character, and we may like or dislike him, you know? But, I mean, you literally, it's just a bunch of innocent kids, like, kind of whimpering underneath this madman's axe as he murders them at the mall. And that's not, it's dark and not in a funny, or it's not darkly funny. It's just dark and sick. And number two things, I have two things to say as usual,
Yeah.
is it's too linked to real world events. I mean, there are too many actual massacres like that. It's too real.
And it's a place that we all actually relate to, like a mall on Christmas Eve, mall
Right.
Santa stuff. Like, we have attachments to that. I mean, I'm not saying that it's like an off-limits topic. I think that they could have maybe handled it a different way where it didn't feel so cheap and it maybe was better, but it just felt like edginess for edginess' sake.
I mean, you could end with zombie elves eating Santa.
Yeah,
and it
for
would
sure.
it would be a totally different
Well,
vibe.
what I was going to say is that's the only complaint with this movie is that minor thing. There's so many ways that you could have ended it. Like all the other storylines, as much as we liked or disliked them, I think ended fine. Like for purposes of the movie, you know.
They didn't offend me. I didn't.
Yeah,
like
they
them.
weren't. No, but they weren't offensive. This Santa storyline, it could have ended with Santa killing Krampus, Krampus killing Santa,
yeah.
zombie elves killing Santa, zombie elves killing, like whatever. It was just the fact of the massacre that was so offensive. And I think too, one of the great joys of watching horror movies is that crazy shit happens that's probably not going to happen to you in real life. Like
Yeah.
that's why we watch horror movies. And when you're presented
Right.
with something that's actually scary to you that might have happened to you, it becomes unpleasant to watch.
And especially when it's handled in such a
like tricky way.
flippant
Yeah.
manner.
Well, there are certainly horror movies that present situations that seem more real or more relatable, but those are usually the more disturbing ones. Those are the ones that aren't fun.
The Strangers.
Yeah.
All right. Well, is that it?
Yeah.
That's it.
that's
Holiday
it.
cheer, everybody.
We have a wheel of death to spin, though, don't we?
I think we do.
Yeah, it's that time of year. So we're going to bring out the old Wheel of Death. And I think, Elizabeth, because you won the last time.
I spun it last time too, but I'll spin it again and I'll win again.
I hope you don't, but...
I hope I do.
I also hope
I
someone
actually
new
hope
wins.
she does, because
All right, it's spinning.
It's spinning.
Life made me
It's
very
spinning.
excited.
Who do we got?
It's gonna be me.
Oh, what? That was on the line. We should spin
It
again.
says my name, fuckers.
Oh, no, it's Elizabeth.
Are you shitting
It was
me?
about to be me, but all right, what do you got,
This is
Elizabeth?
bullshit.
Well, I have 2 movies, and I have to make a split-second decision.
You better hurry up before we spin again.
Spin it again. Spin it again.
We're gonna be watching Saw.
Yeah!
That was on my list. That was on my list.
Well,
Okay,
guys,
never mind.
I quit.
I don't even need to rewatch it. I watched it. No, actually, I watched it like 3 years ago.
We can record it right now, but we're not gonna. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you next week. We'll see you for Saw. And, in the meantime, send us a Christmas present. Tweet us. Instagram us. Facebook us. And,
Could we troll us?
we might have to if y'all don't out there listening. Next episode will be, if you want more Christmas, stick around because next week we're doing our holiday gift exchange. So it's going to be beautiful. I don't know if how much that you'll be privy to, but if you want to participate in the gift exchange, send us a gift. We won't send one back, but we'll appreciate whatever you send in. Until then, for every horror movie on Netflix, I'm Chris.
I'm Patrick, Flying Portobello, Turbo Dog, one man war on terror, Bad Santa done.
I'm Mrs. Claus.
I'm Mr. Claus.
See you next week.